Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're going to be talking about some recent developments in the development world of the Sega CD. That is because there is a brand new SDK available, so developers can actually work more intelligently and easier with the actual Sega CD hardware. Because don't forget, the Sega CD just doesn't pivot up the media. It also has its own hardware on board, and if you work within conjunction of that hardware and the Sega Genesis, you can end up with games that are more impressive than just a stock Genesis game. But for the longest time, actually trying to make games for the Sega CD was a nightmare, because there really wasn't a very modern and robust tool set. But a developer by the name of Damian Rogers, I'm going with his full name on GitHub, not his username, because I don't know how to pronounce it, has developed a brand new software development kit that'll aid in development of new Sega CD games. And honestly, at least to me, that is very exciting because there is still a lot of potential in the Sega CD hardware that is untapped, and that's just because actually getting anything out of it becomes a basic headache. But if you have new modern development tools like we see on the Sega Genesis side of things, you end up with actual products and new games that can absolutely excel and do things you never thought before. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, go to Patreon, link down below as well. But honestly, this is a very big deal, and just so you know, the new software development kit is called Megadev, and this was around for a long time, but basically not finished in any way, shape, or form. But the developer decided to sit down and actually get the thing done, so now version 1.0 is released. And if you're not familiar, a software development kit is basically all of the software tool set that you would need to code for a target platform. Every single console that's ever existed has had a software development kit or an SDK along with development hardware. Now obviously you're not going to have development hardware on this because Sega CD exists. You can run your tests via Mr. FPGA, via emulation, or real hardware. But when we see stuff like Doom 32X Resurrection with a Sega CD component attached, it really does show to you that there is ways to use the Sega CD in new and innovative ways. But before this actual software development kit, trying to do this stuff was basically a one-off. And because it's basically 68K assembly code, which is completely different than modern code, it does require a very talented and very specific developer and coder to actually be able to get this done. And if you take a look at the Sega Genesis side of things, SGDK, a Sega Genesis software development kit, has really aided in giving us some amazing games. Now, I don't know every single game that uses this software development kit versus what actually else is out there, but something like Eartheon shows that the Sega Genesis has a ton of life left in it, and you can really get insane things out of it. Now, again, I am not aware if this is using that software development kit or not. I'm only using this as an example to show you that this hardware still has so much horsepower that is left untapped, and imagine actually using the Sega CD in the same way with a new software development kit. I want to see more games developed specifically for the Sega CD. At this point in time, if you do have real hardware, it's fun to run it on there, but with Mr. FPGA, software emulation, and everything else, it really doesn't preclude people from playing it, because it's not like back in the retail days where you had to realize that the Sega CD install base was not the same as the Sega Genesis. But obviously in 2026 we don't have that problem because anyone can play a brand new Sega CD game, whether it's via emulation, FPGA recreation, or something like original hardware. And again, having the tool set out there that takes away the burden of actually trying to figure out how to do the development and giving the developers more time to actually spend on the game is a good thing. It's like any sort of tool. I use my cinema cameras on film work all the time, and I don't have to worry about my tool set or my camera being an issue and making me actually have to go in and try to figure out how to make it work better. I can make the art that I need to make because the tooling or the camera is doing everything effectively, and that's something I don't have to worry about. That's what Megadev is going to be. It is going to take the burden away from developers of trying to figure out how to develop for Sega CD, giving them a modern development environment with a lot of different software and tooling, and then it gives them back more free time to spend that time developing games, writing more efficient code, doing more art, and everything else. Because all of retro gaming is definitely getting a lot more fun in 2026, and this is why retro gaming is making a comeback. We're getting so many fun games for so many old systems, and I could see a lot of these new games, even including some FMV video in there as well. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me, if we were going to see new Sega CD games, what genre would you want them in? Because of course a lot of what Sega CD was FMV games back in the day, and it would be fun to add them in conjunction with some actual gameplay. And I'm sure I could see a scenario in which a full FMV game could be fun as well, but I just want more amazing 16-bit games that leverage the power of the Sega CD in conjunction with the Sega Genesis. But that's kind of the fun thing about this development. There's so many new SDKs and so many new pieces of software being developed for this retro hardware that you're going to see more and more games coming to these platforms in the future, and that definitely is going to benefit us all. Let's do one soundtrack sample of the Sega CD just because I love the Red Book audio, and I'll be right back with more news on this one. I mean, Red Book audio is one of the biggest benefits of something like the Sega CD, and I can imagine different musicians arranging different soundtracks for some new games that they're developing and just getting absolutely an amazing sound out of them that you don't get on the Sega Genesis. And new software development kits are definitely becoming a big thing in retro gaming. We have new SDKs for stuff like N64, for Sega Genesis, for Sega CD, for Neo Geo, and many other platforms as well. And all you ever want is a better tool set and a better software environment so that you don't have to think so much about trying to make the hardware do the thing you want, and you can spend more time thinking about how to make your coding and art work better as far as a game is concerned. And that definitely is always a benefit because you always want to kind of smooth out the edges of development and basically make things easier for everyone. And all of these new tools are going to work in modern operating systems as well, because a lot of times, obviously, the computers that were used back in the day to make Sega CD games are nothing that really functions that well in the actual modern environment. It's kind of like the one time that I made that 3DO M2 demo disc that I released years ago. I had to go back to Mac OS 9.2.2 to run the actual 3DO M2 software development kit environment and then do the coding in there and use make CD, a command to actually get a bootable disk out. I wish I could have just used my Windows 10 computer at that point in time, but it just didn't work. Now, obviously, no one's going to make a new 3DO M2 SDK, but for Sega CD, Sega Genesis, stuff like that, people do make them, and it absolutely benefits the entire development community as well as the fan community. And I'm sure this will also be useful for some ROM hacks in the future as well. It'll allow for easier testing and easier development. Because the reality is the Sega Genesis and Sega CD still have a lot of life left in them, and games we've seen recently, whether or not they use modern SDKs, show exactly what can be done on the hardware. But the Sega CD, I just want to see dozens upon dozens of new games come across to it. Maybe some ports, maybe some original games. I'd even like to see some of the developers actually get copies printed so I could put them on my shelf next to my original Sega CD collection. It is not a full set, it's actually not that big, but putting modern games in the mix there would be a ton of fun. And trust me, if you don't really know much about the Sega CD, go ahead and play it. There's a ton of games you're going to find on top 10 lists that are great, but if you go into the Japanese Sega CD library, you're going to find that there's definitely some hidden gems out there as well. And if I remember, and I usually don't, I will leave a list of games that you've seen in this video in the description if you want to check any of them out. Because honestly, once you go to Japan, there is a ton more fun to have on Sega CD. But one more soundtrack sample just because I love the music in this one, and I'll be right back with a bit more. I mean, hell, now that it is easier to develop Sega CD games, I wouldn't even mind if developers of Sega Genesis games, some of those fan games as well as some of the new retail games, just went back in and reissued Sega CD versions with new arranged soundtracks. I think that would be a lot of fun. But the reality is, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen next week, probably not even next month. But in the future, you're going to see a lot more new Sega CD games made, and they're going to absolutely be some of the best things you can play in a modern environment, because modern gaming always seems to let us down lately. And that's because developers are going to have a hell of a lot easier time actually making the games. Because as a filmmaker, the one thing I always want, I want my hardware and I want my software never to actually fight me when I'm making something. It should feel like an extension of my own mind and my my own body. It should be muscle memory, and it should allow me to do whatever I want without fighting me. And a new SDK for Sega CD is going to be that for game developers. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.